I used to work at a vet's office, and one day this man came in with his dog and he was screaming for help. I rushed the man back to the examination room and I had him lay his dog on the examination table. I started to examine the dog. The dog was very still and it was not breathing. So I looked at the man and I said, "I'm sorry, but your dog has passed away." The man didn't want to accept that as an answer. He demanded that I give him a second opinion. I told him, "Okay, I will try something else." So I went to the back room and then I came out with the cat. I sat the cat down right next to the dog's body. The cat started walking from head to tail, sniffing the dog's body. The cat stopped, looked at me, and started to meow. I looked at the man and I said, "I'm sorry, but the cat thinks that your dog is dead too." The man still didn't want to accept the fact that his dog was dead. So he starts demanding a third opinion. So I went to the back again, and this time I brung in a black Labrador retriever. The lab starts sniffing the dog's body, walking from head to tail. Then the lab stops and he looks at me and he starts barking. I looked at the man again and I said, "I'm so sorry, but the lab thinks your dog is dead too." The man finally accepts the diagnosis and then he asks me how much he owes. I said $650. The man started raising his voice. He said $650 just to tell me that my dog passed away? I said, "Well, I would have only charged you $50. The additional $600 was for the CAT scan and the lab test." So a couple of months ago, I was feeling down because I just found out some really bad news. So I decided to go sit at a bar. And I told the bartender that I needed 4 drinks. And he was like, "4 drinks? You must have had a really rough day." I said, "Yeah, something like that. After all this time, I just found out that my sister is gay." The bartender handed me my drinks and he was like, "Well, everyone has their own path." But anyways, I finished my drinks and then I went home. And the very next day, I walked into the bar again because I heard some very bad news. And of course, I asked the bartender to give me 4 drinks. And he was like, "Wow, another rough day?" I was like, "Yeah, I just found out that my oldest daughter is gay." He handed me my drinks and he was like, "Well, that's her choice." After he said that, I just finished my drinks and then I went home. Now, the third day, I went back to the bar because I found out some more bad news. And I told the bartender that I needed 4 drinks again. The bartender was like, "Oh my God, you had another rough day?" I said, "Yeah, I just found out that my youngest daughter is gay." That's when the bartender told me that it's up to her who she's attracted to. I was like, "Well, I guess so." And then I finished my drinks and I went home. Now, the fourth day I went to the bar and asked for 4 drinks. The bartender was like, "Dang, doesn't anyone in your family like men?" I was like, yeah, my husband does." Me, John, and Mark went skiing last year. Anyways, we loaded up in Mark's minivan and then we headed north. I remember after driving for a few hours, we got caught in this terrible blizzard. Anyways, we saw this farm and we decided to ride up to the farm. When we knocked on the front door, a very attractive lady answered. Mark saw that she was attractive and he was the very first one to speak. He asked her, was it okay if we could spend the night? She told us she didn't mind because she seen that the weather was getting terrible. She also told Mark that she was a widow and her husband passed away a few years ago. She told us that she felt more comfortable if we stayed in her barn because she was afraid that her neighbors might talk. The lady showed us to the barn and then we settled in for the night. Come morning, the weather had cleared and then we got on our way. But 9 months later, John had got an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from an attorney. It took John a few minutes to figure it out, but it was finally determined that the letter had came from the attorney of the attractive woman that we met on our ski trip. Me and Mark were sitting in the kitchen when John got the letter. John came into the kitchen and then he asked Mark, did he remember the attractive woman from our ski trip? Mark said, "You talking about the ski trip we went on 9 months ago?" Of course I remember her. John asked Mark, did he happen to leave the barn in the middle of the night just to go pay that lady a visit? Mark seemed embarrassed, but he said yes, and she let me right in the house. And I ain't gonna tell you what we did after that. John said, and did you happen to give her my name instead of telling her your real name? Mark's face just turned red out of nowhere. He said, yeah, look, I'm sorry, John. I'm afraid I did, but why do you ask? John looked at Mark, and then he said, well, she just passed away and left me everything.